Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my November 2020 page 112 tag. The page 112 tag was started by Sean the Book Maniac based off of a French literary prize where a short list or a long list, one of those, is created solely on the basis of reading page 112 of each book, completely out of context of the rest of the story, so we are only judging, or they are only judging, based on the quality of the writing on that page. I've been using this tag for much of this year to clear my physical unread bookshelf. I have some prompts, basically, of all my unread books from 2019 and back in this handy-dandy Books and Cats mug. And each month I pick out 3 at random from the mug, and then I read page 112 and hopefully pick the best written book, although sometimes I have other considerations in mind as well. That's my standard most months, but November is NaNoWriMo, a National Novel Writing Month, and a lot of my free time is now currently taken up by attempting to write 50,000 words in a month. It's a big endeavor. And with that in mind, I decided to do something a little special this month. I still wanted to do this tag and then pick one book out of 3 to add to my month's TBR, but picking out 3 random books and then reading them and so forth would mean a lot of extra post-production for me. So instead, I decided to take the runners-up from the last 3 months and pit them against each other and decide from there which one of them should join the TBR for November. And I've already done most of the post-production on those clips, so huzzah! With that, I invite you to step back with me in time from April to October. It was considered impolite to talk about religion at social gatherings. "Where is your mother?" Mantha leans again toward Ellerby, as if the answer might be whispered in confidence. For a moment, Ellerby appears frozen. Then she sets down her fork, picks up her invisible camera, and snaps a photo of Mantha, who blinks just as if a real flash had gone off. "In my day," continues Aunt Glad, "it was considered impolite to ask any questions of a personal nature at the dinner table." "What?" Mantha appeals to the table at large. "I just wanted to know where her mother is." "Mantha." Benny's voice is a shot fired across the bow. "What? What's personal about that?" "Your shirt," Benny says, her voice dangerously stripped of inflection, "is in your ketchup." Snorts of laughter from Tom. Mantha whacks him with her cast. "Hey!" Tom massages his shoulder extravagantly. "Did you see what she did?" "Mantha, leave the table." "Me? Why me?" Tom sticks a finger in each ear. "Dude, you trying to torture the entire canine population of Rundle Junction?" Mantha scrapes her chair back violently. "Why don't you ask him what he's been doing all afternoon?" The pause that follows is interesting. Mantha's outcry had been a wild shot, but from the ruddy splotches reestablishing themselves on Tom's cheeks, it seems she might have struck upon something. All 3 young ladies stop their gabbing. Lloyd, for the first time all evening, attends with curiosity to the conversation. Ellerby angles her invisible camera at Tom. Pim looks up from his battle of vegetables. Aunt Glad, like the last person to realize the others have stopped passing cards in a game of spoons, looks around the table and emits a little sound, something between a cough and an "oh." See, I really like this one too, and again, for somewhat biased reasons, I love family drama at the dinner table. And coincidentally, I think it's some of my own personal strongest writing. And I like this too. I think that the dialogue was pretty crisp and back and forth. There seems to be some tension around someone's mother character that presumably we'd know more about from the last 112 pages. But the real meat of something we can hook onto here is Mantha and Tom sort of flinging insults at each other to see like who will get in the most trouble. And then we have the Aunt Glad character, you know, the snippy old aunt, it seems like, you know, talking about in my day, things were more civilized. So, you know, it's all a bunch of fun, and it moved really well. With no warning, he had been transferred to a far less lucrative position in the Treasury Department in Limbay, and 6 months after that, his widowed sister had died, leaving behind 3 children he had no choice but to take in and raise alongside his 5. With the loss of his prestigious job came the loss of some of the power and respect he'd had as a rich man. Folks still greeted him with both hands, but many stopped coming to his house to visit, knowing that upon leaving they wouldn't receive 5 or 10,000 CFA francs to pay taxi. These days he was retired, living on a meager pension without much to his name besides an ancient blue Peugeot in the garage of his brick house. Chapter 18. The Edwards' summer house wasn't made of bricks, but it didn't need to be. All the brick houses of Newtown Limbay put together couldn't compete with one of its rooms. When Nenny had first gone there with Anna to learn her duties, she had tried not to show Anna how odd she was, but Anna must have seen it on her face. Her eyes couldn't stop roving from the moment they stepped outside of the cab into the front of the 2-story warm graystone and wood shingled house with meticulously manicured boxwood spheres on both sides of the 4-columned portico. It wasn't only the size that astounded her. Why did they need such a big house for only a few months a year? Why 5 bedrooms when there were only 2 children? Didn't they understand that no matter how much money a person had, they could only sleep on 1 bed at a time? But also the profuse elegance. Even on her 3rd day there, she was still flabbergasted by the sumptuousness of her surroundings, especially the living room, with its all-white decor and large windows as if to never lose a view of the sky. She was astonished by its spotlessness, which Anna told her was because Cindy hated dirt even more than she hated cheap things. So yeah, I find this to be very similar to the last book. I love the lush details. I mean, it's a very different set of details. I mean, the way that the house in chapter 18 is described is much more domestic, obviously, than a clubhouse, you know, for meeting up. But it's just still had that lushness in the language. And it also had the same fault of, I think, a couple too many run-on sentences. I also, you know, like the little part at the end of chapter 17, which seems to be different. And just to project again by what I know about it, the book, you know, it seems like the end of chapter 17 might be about a main character living in Cameroon, which is the country that the characters come from, and seems to be talking about his loss of esteem when he lost a job and had, you know, extra troubles come in by way of having to take care of his sister's children. And then chapter 18 moves to America, at least so it seems, like as we start with, you know, comparing the houses of New Limbay, Cameroon to this house. And so Nenny is a character, it seems, who's working in this lush, extravagant house, and Anna is maybe the owner or associated somehow. I really liked the writing a lot. I think there's a lot of interesting commentary about, you know, social and geopolitical differences right here. This boat had an elevator. He thought of that boy with his brand new bicycle, the excitement in his voice. Ed wanted to ride this elevator up and down one more time and memorize the slight dip in gravity that occurred before the doors opened up into the staterooms. Instead, he followed his friends to an already crowded party. He listened as Helen explained how 7 summers ago her great-aunt Mary had given a party right here, and how everyone had arrived full of morbid sentiments, as it was generally understood that great-aunt Mary wasn't long for this earth. And yet she seemed to be going nowhere except Palm Beach each winter. She was 103 and drinking champagne in a deck chair. "All the women in my family are addicted to champagne," continued Helen, making her way through the crowd. "Aunt Mary claims my grandmother put it in my mother's baby bottle, and that she did the same with us." "Aunt Mary," Helen shouted, "this is my fiancé, Hugh Shipley." The old lady struck out her claw-like hand to Ed. "Oh no," said Helen, "this is our friend, Ed Kantowitz." Ed shook her hand. It was surprisingly warm. "This is Hugh," Helen repeated. Aunt Mary looked up and smiled. She'd lost her eyebrows in addition to whatever tautness her skin had once possessed, but her cheekbones were prominent, her eyes bright green. Hugh gave her a kiss on the cheek. "For a moment I thought you were marrying the Jewish fellow." "Oh," said Helen, trying to laugh it off. "No, I'm afraid not." "I'm sure you're a fine young man," the old lady said to Ed. Her voice was shaky, vaguely British. She was not remotely out of it, nor did she seem cruel. She only wanted to get it straight. Somehow, this was worse. "I need another drink," said Hugh, leading Ed away. "I've about reached my limit," Hugh added. "I think there's a 2 a.m. ferry to New London." But just as Ed was about to reassure Hugh that he was fine, just fine, he realized that Hugh might not be. That Hugh looked genuinely uncomfortable. Just as Ed was about to start in on the benefits of lightening up, Helen's father stepped out of the elevator, and Ed watched Mr. Ordway say hello to each and every person, ghosting along the surface of the crowd like some kind of seriously skilled professional, more prophet than politician. I'll stop there and say I think this was a very strong page 112. I mean, actually, technically went a little bit into page 113, but anyway. We have a really nicely set up scene, sort of a very fortunate page for a random page where there's dialogue and scene setting and learning a fair bit about some of the characters, especially Aunt Mary, who, even if she's not an important character, at least you know a fair bit about her from this, about how people think she's, you know, at death's door, but maybe isn't. And there's something intriguing going along with the two men that Helen seems to be involved with here that, well, first of all, well, Ed has assumed her fiancé, maybe because Helen's Jewish, I don't know, but anyway, but her actual fiancé seems a bit jumpy. And then that intro to her father as politician or prophet, I mean, like, that's like a big man, obviously, so you can, perhaps I'm reading a little too much into how there could possibly be some tension there. But just on the page itself, you know, we have this, you can tell it's a well-to-do family because they're throwing parties in stately locations with huge elevators and that sort of thing, and have a big history with that. And then you just get the back and forth banter between everybody. And I thought this was a very strong page. And the one thing that is my problem is that this is a bit of a chunkster of a book. It's almost 500 pages long, and as you know, I'm already behind as it is on the reading I want to do this month, so whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And we're back with crazy special effects into the present, into November again. So to recap, my August book was Strangers and Cousins by Leah Hager Cohen. My September book was Behold the Dreamers by Mbolo Mbue. And my October book was A Dual Inheritance by Joanna Hershen. And from these three, I am going to choose Strangers and Cousins by Leah Hager Cohen. I can't get the dialogue out of my head. I've always just, ever since reading this a few months ago, wanted to know about the nooks and crannies of this family, of what's going on with Ellerby's mother, and also what's going on with Tom. And how Martha was so easily able to sort of put him under the bus with all of the other characters at the table. Especially Aunt Glad with her snippy asides. So that's one reason why I'm choosing this book. Another, admittedly, is it is the shortest of them, and I do have limited time this month. I also feel nostalgic for this book in a NaNoWriMo context because last year I picked it up at a free little library in November when I was going to one of my NaNoWriMo events. So in the spirit of old-time NaNoWriMo, where you could leave your seat and move freely around the cabin without a mask and, you know, events were happening in public, I figured I wanted to get to this one. So that's all I have for you now, or most of what I have for you anyway. I will leave the Goodreads links for all of these books linked down below. I also like to take a little bit of time at the end of these videos to highlight TBR games that the predominantly YA BookTube engage in. I feel like my page 112 tag is sort of in line with their TBR games. It's about, you know, trying to add some spontaneity to the reading list. The TBR games are a lot more involved, though, than what I'm doing, and they're so much fun to watch. I've recently been watching a couple of people who have used candy to determine their books. One person who uses M&Ms and one who uses Skittles. And they pick out two of each candy and then are able to sort of finagle around a board that they made and get to random prompts that encourage what they'll read. So I will link those down below as well. Candy does have a NaNoWriMo feel to me personally, because a lot of people use things like candy as as inspiration or bait, basically motivation, I guess, to, you know, write X amount and then reward yourself. So there's that. And with that in mind, I guess I'm saying I should get back to my writing. And for those of you who are doing Nano as well, I hope you keep at it, keep writing, and for the rest of you, keep reading. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.